No. LeBron is entering his 22nd season in the NBA. He turns 40 in December. LeBron has 4 NBA championships. He's the NBA's all-time leading scorer and the only player with 40,000 points. He's a 4-time MVP, played in 20 NBA All-Star games, and has 3 gold medals. I would say LeBron gave an honest answer to that question. The NFL suspended Buffalo Bills veteran linebacker Von Miller for 4 games without pay for an incident with his pregnant girlfriend in 2023. Miller was arrested for third-degree assault, but the woman declined to press charges. According to the NFL, Miller still violated the league's personal conduct policy. The suspension will cost Miller $2.08 million. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
I need your dollar, that's what I need.
KBLA Talk 1580 celebrates small businesses, the enduring lifeblood of our community, with the launch of the KBLA SMB Marketplace. For the first time, small to medium-sized businesses will have an opportunity to promote their goods and services on KBLA and take advantage of our powerful reach and local marketing power. The SMB Marketplace is hosted exclusively on KBLA1580.com and is accessible from all our social media channels. Whether you're a small mom-and-pop restaurant, a car dealership, or a professional practitioner, we invite you to join in this new KBLA Talk 1580 initiative to promote your business. As a Black-owned small business, you don't want to miss this unique opportunity to gain new customers on KBLA Talk 1580. For more information, contact us today at smb@kbla1580.com. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
And if I share with you my story, would you share your dollar with me? Time to get it. Hey!
It's his walk-on music, Danger Zone. Love that. He's a lifelong Angelino, born and grew up, went to school, met his wife here, raised their 3 children, all in Los Angeles. He is an attorney and general counsel in private practice and has earned a reputation as one of the nation's top criminal justice defense and tax lawyers. For more than 2 decades, he's represented crime victims, and he says defending the constitutional rights of individuals and organizations against governmental overreach. He is running to be the next district attorney for Los Angeles County. Nathan Hochman, welcome back.
It's great to be on again. Thank you.
Yeah, last time you came on, it was the primary. It was a very, very crowded field. I can't remember. It was more than a dozen people running.
I was right at the dozen mark.
Right at the dozen mark. Now it's down to just 2, which is why what we do with general elections. And so congratulations on making it through to being one of the final 2 candidates. And with little over 30 days to go, give us your elevator pitch. Let's start with the elevator pitch. Why Nathan Hochman for district attorney?
So thank you again for having me on. I am a lifelong Angelino, and as someone who's grown up here my entire life, married, raised my children here, I see a guy coming in from San Francisco who is the DA in San Francisco, that's Gascon, after he ruined the public safety in that city. Then he comes to our city and tries to do the same thing. And I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to leave. My family's not going to leave. I'm not going to have my neighbors, my community members leave. And actually, a lot of people have left. They've actually voted with their feet. And it wasn't the high taxes, the traffic, the smog, the earthquakes that got them to leave. It was fear. Fear for themselves and fear for their families. Fear to go out not just at night, but during the day. Fear that if they go back to their car, they might be the statistic that day. and they go back to their house, they might be the statistic, or they're on some, Citizen app or Nextdoor app or whatnot, and they're watching the video of people breaking into their houses. Store owners who have fear that basically because of George Gascon's policies that say that juveniles under the age of 18 who steal just under $950 will not be prosecuted anymore, his blanket policy, store owners are looking at me when I come to talk to them, and they say, you got to do something because it's getting out of control in these stores. And so what we've watched is essentially a spiral of lawlessness that starts small. It always starts small, with one person going into a CVS, taking a bunch of stuff, not paying for it, and not getting prosecuted. Then you got two people going into a Rite Aid or a Walgreens. Then recently we saw 100 kids going into a 7-Eleven. We had 100 kids go into Reuben's Bakery in Compton on the night of the early morning hours of January 2nd, when a 13-year-old took a stolen Kia, smashed into the iron grate. 100 kids ran into Reuben's Bakery. It's been there for 48 years. I talked to Ruben Martinez, Jr. and Sr., who've run it, and they said, look, we've never seen anything like this, and none of those kids who ran in got prosecuted.
Okay, so not your typical elevator pitch, but let's unpack a few of the things you said. You said that George Gascon came from San Francisco, but George Gascon rose through the ranks of the LAPD. He was in Los Angeles far longer than he was in I'm from San Francisco. So actually, I would say he was a guy from LA who went to the Bay.
So you're right. He was a guy in L.A., but he was a police officer. He has never personally prosecuted or defended a single criminal case in his entire life. Imagine that. He's the top prosecutor who has never prosecuted. And I bring 34 years of criminal justice experience. I prosecuted for about 10 years as a federal prosecutor.
So you're saying that police officers don't know the law? Or?
Oh, no. What I'm saying is if he wanted to run for police chief, have at it. He has enough experience. But he's running to be in charge of 750 people every day who go into a courtroom.
I mean, he was an assistant chief of police under Bratton, though.
Yeah, but he's not running and is not the police chief here in Los Angeles.
He's district attorney.
He's a district attorney, and that's a completely different job. That's the job that after the police get done with their investigation and hand it over to the prosecutors go ahead and they marshal the evidence together. They present the evidence to judges and juries. They get verdicts. They defend those verdicts on appeal. He has never done any of the work of a prosecutor in the entire system. He's never been on the defense side and represented anyone in any courtroom. Yet he is the top prosecutor who's never prosecuted, so it's not a shock that 98% of those 750 deputy district attorneys that work for him supported his recall.
But I mean, a lot of those people ran to replace him and did not like the policies that he brought in, even though they came in by way of the voters. These are things that we have been supporting, whether it be Measure R, Measure J. And so if you have a group of employees that don't agree with what you got voted in to do, it's not surprising that they don't like it when you do it, is it?
Just the opposite. Number one, there are over 750 of these prosecutors. 4 of them ran against him. So when you say a lot of them ran against him,
that's a lot.
4 out of 750?
Yeah, I mean, running to take your boss's job. But anyway, I don't want to argue that with you.
It's so important. Yeah. The point is important that when Gascon came in and he wants to execute this new game plan, if he works with the prosecutors, and I've met now, I got the endorsement, I've met actually with 350 of these prosecutors. Often they say the hour and a half they spent with me is longer than they spent with Gascon in 3.5 years. And so if you want to actually achieve anything in this world, you got to have the people buy into the vision. He never even spoke to the people before he imposed the vision on him. And then when they said to him, look, Mr. Gascon, it's not working here, it's illegal here, we can tweak it there, he refused to listen to him. He's refused to course correct. He's refused to pivot. It's a leader doing the exact opposite of what you would expect leaders to do if they want to have followers.
So you're saying that there hasn't been any course correction or changes to the Gascon, to his initial policies?
There have been very minor ones, but let's deal with 2 that he has not changed at all. I spoke earlier about that juvenile policy. And again, I spoke to recently a mom in South LA. She's raising a teenage son. She says to me she's doing her best to teach that kid right from wrong and that stealing has consequences. And he shows her video on his social media of his friends literally stealing from a 7-Eleven and nothing's happening to him. And she tells me, Why is the DA not backing me up?
Right. But I mean, the idea that folks have not been prosecuted under the Gascon administration is just not true. I mean, tens of thousands of people have been prosecuted. So I guess what I'm asking, it feels to me right now, and it's not just with the DA's campaign, but it certainly is escalated with the DA's campaign, because your job is law and order, that there is a tactic being used mostly by conservatives, many Republicans. I know you're no longer a Republican, but it's scare us into voting for you.
Absolutely not.
That's what it sounds like.
You know what? And let me explain to you, if that is the gaslighting that Gascon's campaign has put out there, and let me
I'm not talking about I'm talking about me,
let me tell you,
a single mom of a teenager in South LA.
Great. Then let me tell you why that's wrong. Because I'm going to bring the sensibility of a defense attorney, 24 years as a defense attorney, representing people against the system, cross-examining police officers, exposing holes in a government's case, with the prosecutorial experience, to go into this job. And let me tell you what I reject. I reject extreme policies. I reject the extreme decarceration policies of Gascon that don't look at the facts in the law and predetermine that certain crimes and certain criminals will not be prosecuted based on his political agenda, not the facts in the law.
Is it his political agenda, or is it the agenda of the LA voters who passed Measure R and Measure J?
No, it's his actual political agenda.
So
Measure R and Measure J.
It has no relationship to what we saw in 2020, which was people around the world, and particularly in LA, rising up for reimagining of our justice system. That there's no connection. This is just Gascon all by himself. Is that what you're telling me?
What I'm telling you is that Gascon has the unique power of the DA to implement his agenda. But let me finish the answer, if I might. I reject decarceration policies on one end of the pendulum swing. I reject mass incarcerations on the other. Where I come down is the middle, and let me explain what the middle looks like. In fact, I call it a hard middle because you got to do the work. Blanket policies on both extremes are inherently lazy. The work requires you to look at each case individually. Look at the defendant and the defendant's background. Look at the actual crime committed. Look at the impact on the victim.
But one person's middle is another person's right.
Well,
one
again,
person's left is another person's middle.
This is
so
where
the middle doesn't mean anything to most people. Extreme policies, you support the death penalty. To me, that's an extreme policy.
Well, and let me finish what the middle means, and then we'll deal with the death penalty. Here's what the middle means. That the true threats to our criminal justice, our public safety, often the repeat offenders, and as I'm sure you're aware, about 20% of the people commit about 60% of the crime. Those people need to be in jail. But the ones that don't, and I'm talking about your first-time nonviolent offenders, if they violate society's laws, I'm not going to do what Gascon does and just pretend they didn't. They have to pay that debt back to society. But often it can be through a non-prison alternative, like community service, like restitution. Pay the money back if you steal something, or if they have a serious drug addiction, offer them a diversion program that says, look, you can go to jail, or you can do an 18-month rigorous, intensive, one day at a time rehab program. And if you get to the end of it, we'll give you a certificate and we'll wipe your record
So you're
clean.
telling me that the Gascon administration does not do restorative justice, does not do alternatives to incarceration, does not have consequences for things besides jail?
I'm telling you that with respect to the crimes that he has a blanket prohibition against prosecuting, 1,000%. And he doesn't do those programs. And that's the point. Okay. What I want to do is go back to a situation where we look at each case individually. Now, what's interesting is that you have focused on defendants and the disproportional effect our criminal justice system has had on people of color who are committing the crimes. But what I ask you also to focus on is something that Gascon doesn't, the disproportional effect that criminals have had on people of color. And let me give you 3 statistics.
Okay, but to be fair, he has a victims unit that communicates and deals with victims of violent crime. So I don't know that you can say he hasn't in good faith.
Well, what I say is that he is reduced. In other words, that Victim Service Bureau is actually down 9 positions. That he has instructed the Victim Service Bureau, not just the Victim Service Bureau, his entire office, not to go with victim families who have suffered a son or a daughter or a parent that's been murdered when they're confronting the murderer at a parole hearing, and the murderer, who has counsel, is trying to get out of prison early. For decades, the prosecutor used to go with the victim family, not just to give them comfort, but they get unique access to the information being considered by the parole board in a way the victim family does not.
Why doesn't that happen with victims of police violence? Because, I mean, I've interviewed so many moms and dads whose loved ones, their kids, have been killed, murdered by cops, and they don't even get a call, let alone someone coming down and holding their hand in court.
Well, then that is a total mistake. That is an absolute...
And we're talking about going back all the way back to the 90s.
Right, and that's a mistake, and let me tell you what I would do about it. I would actually, because of my defense background, I can bring real and effective criminal justice reform in a way Gascon cannot. Let's talk about police accountability and police shootings. I actually prosecuted a deputy sheriff back in the 1990s as a part of a team that we went after 16 of them. They were stealing drugs, guns, and money from drug dealers. Nobody believed the drug dealers until we did an undercover operation that exposed the whole operation, and I actually participated in one of the trials that ended up convicting one of them. I can bring these cases. Now, what has Gascon done? If you remember his promises back in 2020, he was going to look at all the Jackie Lacey cases that had not been prosecuted, white police officers shooting unarmed black men, and he was going to bring conviction, prosecution, one after the other. He hired a special prosecutor for $750,000 a year, and in 3.5 years, out of all those cases, he has brought one. And that case is caught up in the courts because it's a case that had a weak theory to begin with. One. So when you tell me that Gascon talks the big talk, I agree.
Well,
if you tell me that
we have seen accountability in several policing cases that they may not be what we would like, but it's definitely an upgrade from what we saw under Jackie Lacey, which was zero,
right?
And under Steve Cooley, which was zero. And both of those folks have endorsed you.
Right, but you will see a bigger upgrade under Nathan Hochman because, again, I bring tools and skill sets that Jackie Lacey and Steve Cooley never had. They had never been a defense attorney. I've spent basically 2/3 of my career being a defense attorney, attacking government cases. I've actually personally prosecuted these police officers in the past myself. I know how to do it. And by the way, because I have clients that have been in prison, and I've visited clients in prison, it's a horrible day. Every day you are in prison is a horrible day. And I will make sure that if someone is factually innocent, they will get exonerated on the day I can determine factual innocence, unlike Gascon. And I'd ask you to look at the case of Ronald Velasquez Jr., who got exonerated on March 6, 2024, the day after the primary. He should have been exonerated and out of prison a month before, but Gascon delayed it a month so it wouldn't impact his primary.
We're talking with Nathan Hochman. He wants to be your district attorney, and we'll continue the conversation when we come forward, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580. Tabitha Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition with powerful new contributions from today's leading voices. This 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later today.
Chevy, All the Things, 2024 Truck Season Radio 30, code GWMR0294000.
This truck season, think about all the things you can do in a Chevy truck. You'll be able to, or you can even just, with impressive towing, incredible bed and tailgate functionality, and multiple powertrains, Chevy trucks have what you need to get things done. When you want to do it all, Chevy's got you. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
To help combat climate change, LADWP is helping neighborhoods have better access to electric vehicles by awarding nearly $130 million in EV rebates to customers just like you. From big savings on used EVs to building new charging plazas, LADWP is charging ahead to help all Angelinos experience the benefits of EVs. Get rebates of up to $4,000 for a used EV and $1,750 for a charger. Learn more at ladwp.com/EV. That's ladwp.com/EV.
Have you noticed the hype around retinol lately? It's all over my social media. But did you know you can get retinol in a body wash? Amazing, right? Olay Retinol Body Wash is packed with moisturizing vitamin B3 complex plus retinol to transform dry skin to visibly renewed in just 14 days. Try it the next time you shower and see the difference for yourself with Olay Retinol Body Wash for visibly renewed skin in just 14 days. And try Olay Retinol 24 Body Lotion.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
And we're talking with Nathan Hochman. He is an attorney in private practice, and he is running for district attorney of LA County. Mr. Hochman, we were talking during News, Traffic, and Sports about how you've been characterized as a conservative. You said earlier in the conversation you want to go back in some respects, and you were, when you ran for Attorney General for the state of California, you ran as a Republican. Now you're a Democrat.
No, I'm not.
You're
I'm actually an independent.
An independent, right. My fault.
And so let me give you...
So you're not a Democrat, but you're not a Republican. So how would you characterize your...
A centrist. I've been a centrist my whole life. I spent the first 20 years of my life as a registered Democrat, then the next 20 years as a centrist Republican. Now I'm running as an independent because I want voters to understand how I would run the office. Independent of politics, focusing on just facts and the law, not like Gascon has done with his political agenda in the decision-making process.
Do you have a political agenda? I mean, doesn't everybody have a political agenda that runs for political office?
No. Not when you run. When I say no,
Okay.
when I say no, let me be crystal clear what I
Yes.
mean by no.
Uh-huh.
What I mean is that when I evaluate criminal cases, I will only evaluate them on two things: the facts and the law. Do I have a separate presidential picks that I've had myself personally? Sure. I've made it crystal clear for months on radio shows and TV shows that I did not vote for Donald Trump in 2016 as a Republican. I didn't vote for him in 2020 as a Republican. I'm not voting for him in 24. I'm voting for Kamala Harris. And I've said this extremely publicly. I've been pro-choice my whole life. I've been pro-LGBTQ rights my whole life. And by the way, what Gascon doesn't tell you when he says it's a Democrat versus a former Republican is that he has been in his life a Republican for 38 years and a Democrat for 13. So is he the former Republican because he's been a Republican in his life twice as long?
He is, and he's also former LAPD.
And am I the Democrat in this? Because I've been a Democrat in my life almost twice as long as he has. But I'm a centrist.
But you chose not to return to the Democratic Party. Why?
I chose to. I thought it was so important in this election because Gascon has so polluted the office with his politics that if I seriously wanted to say to people, I want to get politics out of the office, nothing conveys that more than saying, look, I'm now not a registered Democrat, Republican, I'm a registered independent, and they call it here in California, no party preference.
And someone, Jan Williams, is in the chat saying that, are you saying you have similarities to Kamala Harris because she's also she's a prosecutor?
Yeah. I mean, to the extent that Kamala Harris, when she was a prosecutor, she was the DA of San Francisco, the Attorney General of the state of California. It's interesting, when we're about to talk about the death penalty, do you know which Attorney General is single-handedly responsible for the death penalty still being on the books here in California? I'll answer my own question. Kamala Harris.
But she did some really powerful work and actually got in trouble for refusing to enforce the death penalty. So I don't know that that's the best example.
The reason it's on the books today is that Kamala Harris, when the death penalty was overturned by a lower court, as the Attorney General, she appealed that decision to keep the death penalty on the books. And the reason it's on the books today is because of Kamala Harris. So when we talk about
okay, well, that's a nice cover for you. But the reality is she fought against the death penalty and didn't implement it as San Francisco DA. We're not here to talk about Kamala Harris. Talk to me about where you are with the death penalty.
So let me tell you where I am with the death penalty. And I understand that there are principled arguments on both sides. But here's where it is. If I'm the DA, I swear to uphold all the laws. There's no asterisk. I don't get to cross my fingers and say that it's just the laws I like.
But it is an elected office, and the voters have overwhelmingly said that in LA County that they don't agree with the death penalty.
So it is an elected office to uphold the law. And what people have to understand is if I want to change the law, if George Gascon wants to change the law, he can become a state legislature, change the law, he can pass a proposition to pass the law, he can become the governor. But
this goes beyond Gascon. I mean, you can look at the presidents of the United States. They decide what to emphasize. The Department of Justice under Biden emphasizes civil rights. The Department of Justice under Trump does not. That's not changing the law. It's how you decide to move within the power and the influence of your position.
And again, emphasize is your key word. The death penalty, as long as it's on the books, and twice in the last 15 years, it's been on propositions to eliminate, and the voters of the state of California have chosen otherwise. So what I would say is that the death penalty, in the very rare cases in which it applies, and we're talking like Sandy Hook, you kill 22 kindergartners, Vegas, you kill 56 people with a sniper rifle, God forbid they put a bomb in SoFi Stadium during a concert and kill thousands. In my view, the death penalty in those situations needs to be on the table for consideration and then go through the most rigorous review of any penalty.
But here's the thing, Attorney Hochman. When you look at a policy like the death penalty, and there are reams of data that show that it is subject to racism, I'm not even going to call it racial bias, racism, that black people are way more likely to be given the death penalty, way more likely to be executed. Same with Latino people, but worse for black people. When you see a case like Marcellus Williams, which is a travesty, even if you somehow intellectually can justify the death penalty, the state having the ability to kill its citizens, wouldn't the racial bias in its execution disqualify it out of the box?
Again, when I'm the DA, one of the tools that the state legislature has given the system over the last 3 years is something called the Racial Justice Act. I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Yeah, we talked about it last time you came on. Yeah.
And what it does is it says that defense attorneys now can get discovery from the government in a way they never could, to go ahead and look for not just explicit racial bias, but implicit racial bias. They can get a judge that now has the power to dismiss a case, including, by the way, a death penalty enhancement. They can actually dismiss the death penalty enhancement if they think there is explicit or implicit racial bias, and defense attorneys are now armed with a weapon that they never had before that they could use to expose this.
Right.
So do I think that the system's perfect? Of course not. Will I bring my 34 years of criminal justice experience, especially the 24 years as defense counsel, to make sure that if we ever do use the death penalty when I'm the DA, that it is subject to the highest level of scrutiny, such that you would look at the evidence, and you might disagree with the concept of the death penalty, but you would be able to comfortably look at that evidence and say, yes, that is evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that it at least meets the elements of the death penalty, even if we disagree on whether or not the death penalty should actually apply in the first place.
Should Marcellus Williams have been executed?
Again, I don't know enough, quite candidly, about that case. I've not studied the record, and if you haven't already guessed this about me, I'm all about the facts and the law, and I'm not going to speculate unless I have that trial record, all the trial transcripts, the legal briefing, so that I could confidently come back to you and say yes or no. I don't have that level of information, so it would be inappropriate for me to speculate.
Right. But yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's solid for your profession, but I think when the victim's family asks you to stay the execution, that's pretty much, I don't need to see a file at that point.
Well, and again, staying in execution is different than making a determination that the elements weren't met beyond a reasonable doubt.
Staying in execution meaning he'd be alive today to determine what needs to be done. Yeah.
I understand, certainly.
Yeah. Nathan Hochman is my guest. He's running for DA. He's up for election in this general election. Last day to vote, November 5th. We'll continue the conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. GOP presidential candidate Donald Trump is slamming Democrat Tim Walz for his performance in last night's vice presidential debate. Trump made several posts on Truth Social while Walz and J.D. Vance debated on CBS News and said Walz was obviously not very bright. There are no reports of injuries or damage after a magnitude 4.0 earthquake struck Fresno County, California. The earthquake hit late Tuesday afternoon with a magnitude 3.4 aftershock hitting not long after. Actor John Amos has passed away at the age of 84. The African-American actor was known for his roles in Good Times, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Coming to America, and West Wing. He received an Emmy nomination for his performance in the 1977 miniseries Roots. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Blindster is a family-run business that began in 2010, and we've sold millions of custom blinds, shades, and shutters and received over 100,000 five-star reviews. Don't hire an expensive pro. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
Is this the title? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. After day one of the Lakers training camp practice on Tuesday, LeBron was asked by a reporter if he had anything more to accomplish as a basketball player. LeBron paused for a moment, then calmly said no. LeBron is entering his 22nd season in the NBA. He turns 40 in December. LeBron has 4 NBA championships. He's the NBA's all-time leading scorer and the only player with 40,000 points. He's a 4-time MVP, played in 20 NBA All-Star games, and has 3 gold medals. I would say LeBron gave an honest answer to that question. The NFL suspended Buffalo Bills veteran linebacker Von Miller for 4 games without pay for an incident with his pregnant girlfriend in 2023. Miller was arrested for third-degree assault, but the woman declined to press charges. According to the NFL, Miller still violated the league's personal conduct policy. The suspension will cost Miller $2.08 million. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
October 2nd is California Clean Air Day. Go Metro for free and help cut down on pollution and traffic. It's our way of thanking you because every ride makes a difference. Let's clear the air together. Ready to go right now? Head to metro.net.
For Commonwealth McCann, this is Chevy Radio. Title of the spot is Retail October All the Things 2024 Silverado 1500 Radio 0% APR 60. ISCI code is GWMRO 33400. This is a 60 seconds, English, stereo, full mix.
This truck season, think about all the things you can do in a Chevy truck. You can even just with impressive towing, incredible bed and tailgate functionality, and multiple powertrains. Chevy Silverado, the first ever Silverado EV, Colorado and Tahoe have what you need to get things done. When you want to do it all, Chevy's got you. It's Chevy truck season. Get 0% financing on all 2024 Silverado 1500 pickups when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together let's drive. 0% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 9.3%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 10/31/24.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
And we're in conversation with Nathan Hochman. He's a former federal prosecutor, U.S. Assistant Attorney General, and he is running to be the district attorney for LA County. You were a prosecutor, now you're in private practice doing defense. How do you identify yourself? You know, I'm not asking for your pronouns. I'm asking, do you consider yourself a prosecutor? You talk about defense attorney a lot, and how do you identify? Because it sounds like many of the positions that you take are more like the old school law and order, lock them up, incarcerate our way out of the problem, which we typically affiliate with prosecutors.
Right. And what I would say is that I'm someone who's a criminal justice lawyer, having been on both sides. You know, it's very interesting. When there's a verdict in a criminal case, the verdict is guilty or not guilty. It's not guilty or innocent. Because I thoroughly believe that when anyone steps in that courtroom, we have that presumption of innocence, that it can only be overcome if the government proves its case beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest standard in the land, to a jury of 12 people, and they rule on it unanimously. That is a protection that the system has that, by the way, they don't have that protection in Europe. You're presumed guilty. Asia, Africa, we are fairly unique in the United States in giving people that protection, and they should get it. So if I'm a defense attorney, I assert that presumption of innocence. I hold the government to its proof. And as a prosecutor, I bring that sensibility into every case, that we have to build those cases beyond a reasonable doubt. And if there is legally inadmissible evidence, so in other words, if there's a confession on tape, video, crystal clear, the guy says, I did it, but that confession was obtained illegally, you cannot use it. Even though everyone in the whole world knows he did it, he admitted it, you cannot use it, and that person, if you don't have enough evidence, you cannot prosecute. So I fervently believe in the system, and I've been on both sides of that system, and I would, again, bring these sensibilities if I become district attorney.
As in terms of the death penalty, you said, you know, if someone shoots up a whole mall or they do something really egregious, that's the case that should go to the death penalty. I think we talked about this last time you were here. My sister was murdered. She was shot by, you know, my other sister's estranged husband. Her and her girlfriend. And we still did not seek the death penalty because I'll go back to something I saw in an interview with Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is if I think the death penalty is morally wrong, then there's nothing that can justify it, not even the murder of my own sister. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And that's not because I don't think the guy deserves consequences, but it's because if we believe it's morally wrong, and then you add on top of that the racial bias, which automatically disqualifies it, in my view, then it doesn't matter what the person did, in a sense.
And I completely appreciate your point of view. Your point of view makes sense. But if I'm become the district attorney and not a state legislature or the governor or anything that can change the law, I'm vowing to uphold the law. If I don't like this law, I shouldn't run for district attorney. If George Gascon doesn't like certain laws in there, he shouldn't run for district attorney. He should run to change the laws, if that's his true sensibility. If I'm running to uphold the law, I will do it. I will do it in the best way I can.
But every attorney, every person in power has discretion about which parts they're going to emphasize. I mean,
but discretion. Let's be clear what discretion means. Discretion doesn't mean never.
Understood. I mean,
discretion means
it can mean never, or it can mean always.
Actually, again. Discretion means you have to look at the facts and the law in each case individually. So, for instance, with your situation, we would evaluate the facts and the law in your situation, which is different than every other situation.
Yeah, understood. So, Can you give me an example of a criminal defense case that you feel proud about? A case that you defended.
Well, certainly. What's interesting is a lot of the cases I defended, you would never find out about, because I was able to beat it back at the investigation level, because the government had done search warrants, they had interviewed dozens of people, they had received hundreds of thousands of pages of documents, and I did my work as well. And the government came out swinging. They said effectively my guy did a whole range of crimes, and I did my own investigation. And I found out that a lot of the people who were saying things about my client had biases and motives and were completely lying. And I then did something interesting. I went to the government before they brought the case. And I said, here is the defense. I'm so confident in this defense, I'm going to lay it out, even though a defendant has absolutely no obligation in our system to testify or prove his innocence. And I was able to convince the government, after a 3.5-year investigation, that the underpinnings of their case were completely wrong. And the client, who had been under threat of federal indictment, this time it was a federal case, and basically, his entire business, his entire life, his entire family and friends just assumed he had done it. When he kept telling me over and over again, I didn't do it, he was eventually vindicated. That would probably be one of my best situations. And I'll tell you the other best situation. As a prosecutor, I've been involved in situations where we basically thought a guy did it. Back to the example of someone who confessed. But we looked real hard at the evidence and how they got the evidence. And we determined that the police violated the law in obtaining that evidence. And even though everybody would say, look, you got to bring that case, let the jury decide, we didn't bring the case because justice demanded we didn't. In fact, one of the things I was taught on my first day in the job as a prosecutor is that the prosecution always wins when justice is done. That's a Supreme Court case. Yeah. And it doesn't say the prosecution always wins when there is a conviction.
Right.
And so some of the best moves I ever made, it made me feel like I was actually doing justice in this world, is actually not bringing the case against certain people.
Your website says, and it's nathanhochman.com, by the way, Hochman, nathanhochman.com, if you want to find out more for yourself. You say that you're going to restore the partnership between law enforcement and the district attorney's office. You also said earlier in this interview that you're committed to holding law enforcement accountable. What's the balance there? What does that mean?
Here's the balance. I've had, not only have I personally prosecuted law enforcement officers, but my brother and I set up the LA Sheriff's Foundation back in 2020 because we actually believed that the police needed more resources. An example, the air rescue part of the Sheriff's Department didn't have a drone that could go into forested areas to search for people who got lost. We raised them the money that was outside their budget to get them a drone. 3 lives have been saved to this date. So law enforcement understands that I will be their partner, the law enforcement officers who are doing the great job every day in very difficult and dangerous circumstances. But I will have no tolerance if a law enforcement officer crosses the line. And what's interesting, and I shared this with you, that law enforcement tells me that no one hates a bad cop more than a good cop, because the bad cops truly destroy the reputation for the ones that are trying to do it well.
What about a bad system?
Well, again, to the extent that there's a bad system, you have to fix the system, and that's where actually being in the system. George Gascon has never been in the prosecutorial part of the system. He was a police officer. That's it. He's never acted as a lawyer in the system. I have on both sides. So if there are problems in the system, I won't let those problems just sit there and fester. I will go ahead and tackle those problems hard on. Just like I came in here today, knowing that you might not agree with everything I'm going to say, but I thought it was so important to get to yourself and your listeners and make sure they understand that I am not the caricature, the Gascon, shall we say, that Gascon is trying to paint of me. He's trying to do a con on you folks to say I'm going to bring back mass incarceration and lock up every black and Hispanic person possible. Nothing could be further from the truth.
I mean, I do appreciate your coming in person, spending the hour with us. Absolutely means a lot. And showing the respect to black media means a lot. But you started out the hour saying that we need to lock up the little kids that are running in and stealing stuff from the 7-Eleven, and we need to and that the streets are scary, and the business owners are scared, and the mamas are scared. So it sounds kind of like you do want to go back to a much more mass incarceration system. Maybe I should ask you, have you taken a position on Prop 36?
I have, but let me deal with something you just said, that you want to lock up the kids. Again, you didn't listen to my approach. My approach, and I said it clearly, I'll say it again,
okay.
For nonviolent first-time offenders, often they still have to pay a debt back to society.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to let people go into a 7-Eleven or Reuben's Bakery, ransack the place, and nothing happens. Parents wouldn't allow their children to do that, and they need to have the DAs back. But look at my remedies for that. My remedies can be community service. It's not locking them up. It's having them pay a debt back to society for violating society's laws, and as importantly, teaching them about the consequences of their actions. Because right now, if you have somebody, teenager, going into a 7-Eleven, taking whatever they want, walking out, waving bye-bye, and nothing happens, imagine the message that sends to young people.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fairly rare, but
it's not.
Okay.
And shoplifting is up 133%. By the way, that's the reported shoplifting. I have talked to 7-Eleven owners, and by the way, they're all franchisee owners. These are families that have put their life savings to buy a 7-Eleven. They can't even sell it nowadays. And they don't even report the crimes to the police because the police have told them the DA's office isn't prosecuting the crime, so we're not even taking the report.
And why are the police telling them that? Is that the police's job to discourage shop owners from reporting crime?
Just the opposite. The police are telling them that the DA's office is not going to prosecute the case.
Right. Is that what they should be? Okay, that's a whole other
show.
No,
the police should be taking a report even if the DA's office is going to decline the case, and it'll just be one more example of the shoplifting numbers going up. So those shoplifting numbers, though 133%,
right,
vastly underreport the shoplifting that's going on right now.
So where are you on 36?
So I'm in favor of 36, and let me tell you why. 36 is trying to be a step and a balance in the right direction. It doesn't go ahead and repeal Proposition 47.
Pretty much.
No, it doesn't. It says, for instance, with theft, that you have to be convicted one time of theft, misdemeanor theft. Then you have to be convicted a second time of misdemeanor theft. And on the third time of misdemeanor theft, a judge may make that felony eligible and may actually put you in jail for it. Doesn't have to. Same thing with drug use, that you have to be convicted. If you're using meth, heroin, fentanyl, convicted once of doing it, convicted twice of doing it, and on the third time, it can be treatment eligible. A judge can order you into treatment at that point. It also goes after fentanyl poisoners, and I use that word very intentionally, because these are the people that knowingly give out these counterfeit pills, Adderall, Xanax, Oxycontin, Percocet, to people without telling them that there's a lethal dose of fentanyl in them, and they know that, and they are killing them. So it goes after the fentanyl poisoners or murderers.
So how does a supporting Proposition 36 not to give us the message that you're not wanting to go back to an era of mass incarceration? One of the problems with three strikes and that whole era, the Prop 36 philosophy, is that it ends up criminalizing people where they cannot get a second chance, cannot have their records expunged, cannot come back into society, and suffer permanent double jeopardy because of having to, be a felon based on many times minor crimes.
So again, Proposition 36 is targeting the repeat offenders. And I told you earlier that about 20% of the people are committing about 60 to 70% of the crimes. So it doesn't target that first-time person, who makes a mistake, gets convicted. It doesn't even target the second time you make the mistake. You got to actually commit this a third time. And by that time, you are a repeat offender. You are someone who's actually causing harm in our society. And again, take a drug addict, for instance. The drug addict is often cut off from their family, has lost their job, is living either in their car or their street, but the drug dealer doesn't take credit. The drug dealer takes cash. So how are you going to get cash? You have no other way of getting that cash other than to steal or
get
commit
a job.
Crime.
Yeah, we're talking with Nathan Hochman. Not that I'm suggesting you should get a job to support your drug habit, by the way. We're talking with attorney Nathan Hochman. He is running to be the next district attorney of LA County, and we'll continue this conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
I'm Jeff Davis. I believe my daughter should inherit something. but not the role and responsibility of burying me. That's why I have a pre-need burial insurance plan through Harrison Ross Mortuary. Their plan offers me 4 payment options. 1, pay in advance or pay over 3, 5, or 10-year time periods to keep the payments affordable. Contact the professionals today at Harrison Ross Mortuary. We can be reached at area code 310-704-4901. That's 310-704-4901. And ask for me, Jeff Davis. Thank you.
Hey, LA residents, it's planting season and the perfect time to get shade trees growing around your home. LADWP and City Plants are giving every resident up to 7 free trees. That's right, 7 free trees delivered right to your door. Trees are great for the environment, help improve air quality, and can help you save on your bill when you use less air conditioning to stay cool indoors. Learn more at ladwp.com/free trees. That's ladwp.com/free trees.
For Commonwealth McCann, this is Chevy Radio. Title of the spot is Retail October All the Things 2024 Silverado 1500 Radio 0% APR 60. ISCI code is GWMRO33400. This is a 60 seconds, English, stereo, full mix.
This truck season, think about all the things you can do in a Chevy truck. You can even just with impressive towing, incredible bed and tailgate functionality, and multiple powertrains. Chevy Silverado, the first ever Silverado EV, Colorado and Tahoe have what you need to get things done. When you want to do it all, Chevy's got you. It's Chevy truck season. Get 0% financing on all 2024 Silverado 1500 pickups when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together let's drive. 0% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 9.3%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 10/31/24.
Don't miss St. Heron's El Dorado Ballroom at Walt Disney Concert Hall, October 10th, 12th, and 13th. This celebration of transcendent Black performance is curated by Solange Knowles and named in tribute to Houston's historic El Dorado Ballroom. This program features a night of classical and symphonic works by Black women composers, including Patrice Rushen and Solange Knowles, as well as nights dedicated to avant-garde expressions in jazz and soul, as well as gospel. Get your tickets today at laphil.com.
Hey, John, why so glum?
I just got let go. The company's downsizing. This is the 3rd time in the last 2 years. I'm done with this.
Have you thought about My Computer Career? I've heard they can train you for a career in IT in just a few months, including cybersecurity and the basics of AI. And you don't need prior training or experience. Now that's a recession-resistant career.
Wow, thanks. I'll check them out.
Go to mycomputercareer.edu and take the free career evaluation. mycomputercareer.edu. Financial aid is available for qualified students, including the child.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
Attorney Nathan Hochman is with me. As you know, he's running for LA County DA. And gosh, time flies when you're talking politics. Try to do a speed round here and squeeze some things in. I was walking in my neighborhood and I saw a sign that said Nathan Hochman for DA and Gascon must go. And right next to it was a sign that said Black Lives Matter. I found that amazingly ironic. What do you think of when you hear that, and how would you say that you would interact with those of us who are dedicated to the cause of making sure that Black lives do matter?
I'd say that I really enjoy and look forward to dealing and working with yourselves and others who have been in the Black Lives movement and care about these issues, because these are incredibly important issues. I've actually had the chance to speak to one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter. I've had a chance to speak to members of the Innocence Project. And these are real issues. These issues exist today. They're not historical issues. They exist today. And they need a focus. And they need, by the way, but they need someone who's actually been in the courts and can get stuff done. When I was a prosecutor, I prosecuted. You know, if I built cases, I took them to a judge or a jury, I convicted people. When I've been a defense attorney, same thing. I look at the facts. I get deep into the facts. What are the best arguments that can be made? And if there's problems in the system that still exist after the Racial Justice Act, after the Racial Blind Charging Act, then you need to make sure those prosecutors are doing the best job possible.
Well, when you talk about, you were talking about the good cops who don't like bad cops. A lot of us are waiting for them to step up and say something. But you talked about the Racial Justice Act as a possible remedy. And that, I assume that means that you acknowledge that there's racial bias within the system.
There will always be some level of bias in the system, whether it's bias against
but I'm talking about anti-blackness.
Well, certainly there will be until we can train it out of people, and that might never happen.
So
there will always be some level of bias in the system, but the key part of the system is identifying it. If you actually have now tools in place that allow defense attorneys to bring motions to court and then motions to the government that says, give me your records, all those text messages, all the statistics, I want that stuff, and I want to be able to prove that explicit or implicit racial bias exists, then that is a check on the system. It certainly is not a perfect check. That will constantly keep needing to tweak the system to deal with these issues.
Understood. But under the current DA, Gascon, we do have at least access to data about those charging decisions, right? The racial disparities within the charging systems. Is that something you would do? Is that something you would track in terms of, your use of the Racial Justice Act?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's the legal obligation of a DA's office. I will honor my legal obligations, and we will...
I guess it's more beyond a legal obligation to a spirit of transparency.
Let me get right to the spirit of it. The spirit 100%. I mean, what am I afraid of? If there's a mistake in the system, you must fix the mistake. That's what, as a defense attorney, that's what I tell the prosecutor. It's like, you might have thought you built a great case, but let me show you all the mistakes in it, and you got to deal with the mistakes. And I am not afraid of, if there are mistakes, I'll admit it. But I will try to learn from the mistakes and never repeat the same mistake again. That's the difference between me and George Gascon. When he came into office, he tried a whole bunch of things. But when they weren't working, he didn't pivot or course correct in meaningful ways that have actually dealt with our safety. And to your point about those two signs, the Black Lives Matter sign and the Vote for Nathan Hochman for DA sign being next to each other, I think that reflects that safety turns out to be an issue that cuts across society. It literally cuts across political lines, cuts across demographic lines, it cuts across geographic lines in our society. Because people just want to feel safe again. They want to make sure it's being done in a smart, effective way. They do not want, the racial bias to dominate the system or even infect the system. But they want to go back to a time when they didn't have to think every day about, is their car going to be broken into? Is their home going to be broken into? Do we have gangs now that literally George Gascon has said, by taking away prohibiting the gang enhancement.
So obviously you're bringing those back.
Yeah, I would bring it back for consideration in the appropriate case. I'm not going to go bring it back and say, I don't care what the facts are, every gang member gets charged with it. Of course not. But when you have a violent crime that is motivated by your gang participation, the best example is one gang going ahead and going to someone else's neighborhood and shooting another gang member. That is where the gang enhancement has traditionally been applied. That's where it probably should absolutely be considered again. But I'm not going to predetermine right now on your show or ever that what I will do on an individual case, because that is the hard middle approach. You got to look at each case individually.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your spending the hour with us. I could definitely keep talking. We have tons more to talk about, but I appreciate your transparency and showing up and having the conversation.
And it won't be the only time I show up. If I become the DA, I expect you to hold me accountable.
He'll come back.
And you will. I have no fear that you will hold me accountable, and I'll be in the hot seat again right here, and you will ask me all the tough questions, as you should, and I will do my best to answer them.
NathanHochman.com is where you can find out more. NathanHochman.com. It's Hochman. You probably know that by now. Thank you for coming in. Tavis Smiley is up next. Until tomorrow, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.